Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take these vast oceans of information and, well, we distill them into the most potent conversation-starting shots of pure knowledge.
And today, we are definitely going deep.
We are. Today, we're scrapping on the Ghostface mask and doing a deep, decades-long slash through one of horror's most enduring and, frankly, smartest franchises, Scream.
It's so much more than just a horror franchise, though. It's this winding narrative that is perfectly mirrored and often predicted shifts in American culture and, the media landscape for nearly 30 years.
That's a great way to put it. We're talking about a series that covers 7 major films and a television spinoff.
A huge body of work.
Right. So our mission today is pretty laser-focused. We are dissecting the DNA of Scream to understand how it didn't just survive, but how it fundamentally redefined the slasher genre.
And how it maintained that astonishing long-term character continuity across decades. That's a huge piece of it.
A huge piece. And of course, how it perfected the blueprint for the modern requel, which is like the genre revival strategy of the 2020s. We're also really going to analyze the evolution of Ghostface itself, which is maybe the greatest horror villain achievement of the last 3 decades.
It's a fascinating case study. I mean, our sources cover everything from the nervous energy of the novice screenwriter Kevin Williamson to the logistical chaos of the sequels, all the way up to the modern film's commentary on toxic fandom. It's all in there.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start with the hook, that stroke of genius that immediately separated the 1996 original from virtually everything else happening in horror at the time.
You have to be talking about the opening scene.
I'm talking about the opening scene, specifically the decision to cast and then immediately kill Drew Barrymore.
That choice wasn't just shocking. It was structurally necessary for the film to work. Barrymore was, without question, the most established, the highest billed star in the entire movie.
Oh, absolutely. You see her face on the poster, you see her name in all the marketing, and the expectation is clear. She's the central figure, the final girl, or at the very least, a major protagonist.
And then, 10 minutes in? She's dead.
Brutally. That phone call, the cat and mouse game, the sheer intensity of that scene, it's an instant classic, but the core shock is just getting rid of your biggest star right at the beginning.
It's a deliberate act of audience manipulation. And it worked because it just shattered the established rules of contemporary horror.
Yeah.
You mentioned the parallel earlier. It's that alienation effect, a technique you can trace all the way back to Marion Crane's death in Psycho nearly 40 years prior.
Right.
When you kill the apparent center of the film, the audience just loses its footing. The unspoken contract between the viewer and the filmmaker, that promise that the recognizable star is going to lead the way, is instantly nullified.
And it's instantly terrifying because suddenly you, the audience, realize that the rules you thought you knew don't apply, and that means no one is safe. That structural subversion, taking the audience's safety net away, is really the first step in establishing Scream as a true meta-horror experience.
And that's why the series has such remarkable endurance. While Scream absolutely delivers the requisite gore and the necessary jump scares, the reason it consistently works, unlike other slasher franchises that eventually just become reliant on spectacle.
Right, just kill after kill.
Is because at its heart, the series is fundamentally a mystery series. Every single film is a meticulously constructed whodunit layered just beneath the slasher tropes.
So it makes the audience active, not passive.
Precisely. That forces you to engage, to try and figure out who is behind the mask this time, making you work just as hard as Sidney Prescott.
And that combination of, structural subversion and mystery is what turned a horror film into a cultural phenomenon. Let's jump back to the mid-90s and get into that origin story, because the sources detailed that this whole meta-phenomenon started with a surprisingly simple concept in the mind of a then-novice screenwriter, Kevin Williamson.
Right. The year was 1994, and he was inspired, yes, by the horrifying, real-life Gainesville Ripper serial murders. But the actual genesis of the script was a much smaller, much more personal moment of panic.
That's a great story.
It is. The research really highlights this blending of high-profile true crime with just, personal paranoia. Williamson was alone in a friend's house, watching TV, and he noticed an open window he didn't remember seeing earlier.
That's all it took.
That flicker of anxiety, that moment of, is someone here? Combined with that true crime inspiration, channeled directly into what became the initial 18-page script treatment.
Which was the entire opening sequence with Drew Barrymore.
The whole thing.
And it was written at this frenetic pace, which really speaks to the immediate energy of the idea.
Oh, yeah. Williamson wrote that entire opening over just 3 days, specifically keeping the mood right by listening continuously to the soundtrack for Halloween for inspiration. He was consciously aiming to emulate the structure and pacing of the best slashers.
His goal was simple: write the horror film he desperately wanted to watch but just couldn't find in theaters. A film that acknowledged the existence of the horror genre itself.
And is hilariously recursive that the original working title, which was later changed during post-production, was actually Scary Movie.
Which then became the title of the hugely successful parody franchise that Scream itself inspired. I mean, the irony is just perfect.
It's fantastic. So that original script, which quickly became known as Scary Movie, was bought by Miramax for their Dimension Films label in the spring of 1995 for $400,000.
And for a debut slasher script, that's a pretty hefty price tag. It signaled that they knew this was a smart piece of work.
The genius was in establishing that meta-identity right away. The film masterfully combined traditional slasher elements, the knife, the stalking, the iconic mask, with constant self-aware commentary and explicit, loving homages to horror classics.
Well, they're everywhere.
You see nods to Halloween, Friday the 13th, Prom Night, A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a film that demands you have homework, but it rewards you immensely for it.
And the dialogue was absolutely central to making that meta-identity work. We find Williamson actually developed the script around a single powerful line that became the thematic anchor for the whole series.
And that line addressed decades of real-world criticism that had been leveled against the horror genre.
The line is, movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative.
That's the thesis statement right there.
It really is.
The sources explain this was Williamson's direct, confident response to the contemporary concerns about media violence. He was effectively rejecting the blame that was always placed on horror films for inspiring real-world violence. It's an intellectual defense built right into the narrative.
It's so clever. And interestingly, the Motion Picture Association of America, the MPAA, they even objected to that dialogue, maybe because it felt like the film was speaking a little too much truth about the relationship between art and life.
Which takes us directly to the franchise's institutional voice of meta-commentary, Randy Meeks.
The film geek who lives and breathes horror tropes, Randy didn't just summarize cliches. He laid out the roadmap for meta-horror by outlining the specific rules for surviving a horror movie.
And those rules are now just foundational to pop culture, right? No sex, no drugs or drinking, and certainly never ever say the classic hubristic phrase, "I'll be right back."
Because you won't be.
You will not be. But the brilliance isn't just listing the rules. It's showing how the characters and the film itself constantly violate them, which is what creates the tension.
And the self-reference goes so much deeper than just Randy's monologue. Our sources highlight these great moments where the killers, Billy and Snoo, they actively admonish the police for not watching Prom Night for advice on how a slasher scenario works.
Yes, or my favorite, Randy watching Halloween in the middle of a party, yelling at Laurie Strode to look behind her, while Ghostface is slowly creeping up right behind Randy himself. The irony is just multi-layered and relentless.
It is.
And this self-referential approach was the electric shock that woke the slasher genre up. The critical takeaway is that it struck a major chord because the slasher subgenre had seriously declined in popularity in the early 1990s.
It was dead, really.
It was, mostly due to increasingly poor, creatively exhausted sequels in the established franchises. Scream came along and revitalized it, shifting the subgenre toward younger audiences and normalizing casting established high-profile actors, which had been pretty uncommon for slasher films. It legitimized the genre again.
But the thematic depth of the original film goes beyond just acknowledging tropes. The analysis we looked at highlights an underlying emotional core that's rooted in the writer's own identity.
Absolutely. The research highlights Williamson's comments in a 2021 interview where he discussed how his own experiences as a gay man influenced the central narrative, specifically the character of Sidney Prescott.
That's fascinating.
He explicitly stated he related to the final girl, the last survivor, and her struggle because it parallels the survival tactics that young gay individuals must employ in a world that often targets them.
He used a really powerful phrase saying, subconsciously, I think the Scream movies are coded in gay survival. That's a significant statement that elevates the whole framework.
It really does. It reframes Sidney's decade-spanning struggle, not just as a heroine escaping a madman, but as someone constantly dealing with trauma, with paranoia, and the need to trust her own intuition to survive hostile environments.
It adds so much depth.
And if we look deeper, Williamson also confirmed that the complex, often volatile relationship between the two original killers, Billy Loomis and Stu Macher, was queer-coded, based on real-life gay killers. This layer adds this profound, sometimes dark, thematic weight to what is, on the surface, a simple slasher.
It really moves the film away from just supernatural threats and into the territory of social commentary. The film explores female trauma and the dangers posed by angry, entitled males.
That's Billy's entire motivation, right? It's derived from his resentment toward Sidney's mother, Maureen, blaming her for the breakdown of his parents' marriage, and then channeling that anger into the abuse and attempted murder of Sidney.
So making Billy and Stu these angry, entitled men seeking revenge makes them far more grounded and maybe more psychologically realistic antagonists than, say, the masked undead figures of other horror franchises.
And that brings us to the killer identity itself. Ghostface, a true, immediate horror icon. What is so critical for the franchise's long-term continuity is the clear distinction that Ghostface is fundamentally an identity or a mantle, not a single person.
Correct. The mask design, which is based on the ghost shroud costume, is instantly recognizable. It's still a wildly popular Halloween costume choice decades later.
Oh, for sure.
But the single consistent element that ties every single film entry together, providing that enduring, chilling constant, is the voice of Ghostface, provided flawlessly by Roger L. Jackson in all the films and even the third season of the TV series.
Jackson's voice is the soul of the villain. The unsettling quality comes from the fact that we, the audience, know that voice is a permanent fixture. But the person wearing the mask is always someone we know, someone we trust, or maybe someone we would never suspect.
And the first film set the trend that launched the franchise's narrative complexity with that shocking revelation of two killers, Billy Loomis and Stu Macher.
A device that was pretty uncommon at the time. It instantly doubled the danger and the suspense.
And we get such great little production details that underscore the commitment to horror history. Billy's surname, Loomis, is a direct dual homage to Dr. Sam Loomis from Halloween and Sam Loomis, Marion Crane's lover in Psycho.
It's a great deep cut and a fun piece of behind-the-scenes trivia. Skeet Ulrich, who played Billy, was actually the actor in the costume in that famous scene where Ghostface approaches Randy.
No way.
Yes, which just adds to the meta-irony of the whole situation.
The cultural influence was immediate, and it was massive. The success of Scream led to a full-blown revival and a rush of imitators, spawning this wave of teen-centric horror films of the late 90s.
Like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend, both of which were either written by or heavily inspired by Williamson's style.
But the most stunning detail from the immediate cultural fallout has to be the technology anecdote.
Oh, the caller ID thing.
The public fascination with the film's use of the telephone, the calls coming into the house, was so intense and unsettling that the use of caller ID in the U.S. increased by a reported 300% following Scream's release.
That's insane. It's hard to imagine a piece of fiction today having that immediate and measurable an impact on consumer behavior. Ghostface truly got inside people's heads.
So that original film was a massive, unexpected commercial blockbuster. It drew over $173 million worldwide. And success breeds speed in Hollywood, right?
Absolutely.
So a sequel, Scream 2, was greenlit almost instantly. But that immediacy created enormous production challenges, moving the franchise from a surprise hit to a logistical nightmare.
It was an insanely tight turnaround, aiming for release just 1 year after the original film. It speaks to the studio's greed, for sure, but also to Williamson's incredible foresight.
How so?
The sources detail that he actually had a head start because he had drafted 2 5-page outlines for potential sequels when he sold the original script.
Wow.
Yeah, specifically as an incentive to buyers, guaranteeing them a franchise launch from day one.
That's not just a clever business move, it's a really confident one. He was selling a trilogy from the start, but the production of Scream 2 became legendary for its chaos.
The biggest setback was a major script leak online.
Oh, I remember this.
It revealed the identities of the killers and several major plot points weeks before filming even wrapped. In the pre-internet crackdown era, this was a complete disaster.
It was a nightmare that perfectly reflected the meta nature of the series. You know, here they were making a movie about sequels and their rules, and they were forced to follow the rule of never trust the internet.
Exactly. Williamson was forced to rewrite significant portions of the script rapidly, often delivering entirely new pages on the actual day of filming. Can you imagine the anxiety on that set?
No.
A key plot point being handed to you minutes before the camera rolls, knowing the entire film's success rests on the secrecy of those new pages. It must have been worse than actually being stalked by Ghostface.
The sources confirm they implemented extreme measures to maintain that secrecy. Cast members only received portions of the script, and the critical pages revealing the killer's identity were often given out only moments before shooting those scenes.
It's a real testament to the crew, the cast, and Wes Craven that they managed to hit that one-year turnaround target with the final film remaining so coherent and suspenseful.
And the meta-commentary evolved perfectly with the sequel. The first film joked about horror movies generally. Scream 2 focused squarely on mocking the conventions of the horror sequel.
Right, the increased body count, the lack of originality, the bigger, louder requirement, all while simultaneously adhering to those very rules. The film itself became a comment on the sequel phenomenon it was a part of.
The sequel, thankfully, maintained the creative momentum. A lot of critics and fans consider it equal to or even superior to the original, but when the trilogy closer, Scream 3, arrived in 2000, the franchise hit a significant speed bump.
Both creatively, due to staffing changes, and culturally, due to a real-world tragedy.
Creatively, Williamson was unavailable because of other commitments, so Aaron Kruger wrote the screenplay, working only from a brief outline from Williamson. But the seismic shift was cultural.
The Columbine High School Massacre in 1999. It occurred right before production was set to begin, and it completely reshaped the environment for any film dealing with violence, especially violence in a high school setting.
That real-world tragedy led to intense scrutiny of media violence, and the studio reacted strongly, pushing hard for a severely reduced emphasis on violence and a greater focus on the series' trademark humor.
And director Wes Craven found himself caught in the middle, facing immense pressure to sanitize the film.
This is a crucial detail about that creative tension. The sources reveal the studio actually suggested a version of the film with no on-screen violence at all.
An idea Craven firmly rejected. He recognized that while the film needed to be sensitive to the cultural moment, stripping the horror entirely would kill the franchise's identity. He navigated a really difficult path, resulting in a film that often feels tonally lighter than its predecessors, and that's a direct reflection of that external pressure.
The trauma of Columbine also forced a significant overhaul of Williamson's original story idea for the third film, which speaks to the immediate real-world impact on fiction.
Williamson's original scrap storyline involves Stu Macher, Matthew Lillard's character, somehow surviving his electrocution and head trauma in the first film.
I've heard this rumor.
And he'd be orchestrating new attacks from prison, specifically targeting high school students. They realized immediately that linking mass violence to a high school setting after Columbine would be completely unacceptable and profoundly insensitive.
The entire premise had to be abandoned.
Completely, for a new direction.
Which brings us to the challenges faced by the core continuity itself. Neve Campbell's fame was growing, and her commitments meant she was only available for 20 days of filming.
This logistical constraint was perhaps the greatest challenge to character continuity. They couldn't build the film around Sidney Prescott as the central target and narrator.
Right.
This necessitated a structural concession, forcing the script to reduce Sidney's central role and focus much more heavily on the other core survivors. Gale Weathers, played by Courtney Cox, and Dewey Riley, played by David Arquette. It unintentionally broadened the scope of the central hero group.
Despite all these production and cultural challenges, Scream 3 concluded what was intended to be a trilogy. However, it's a film that has gained remarkable thematic relevance long after its 2000 release.
Oh, it's had a profound critical reappraisal.
Absolutely. The film unexpectedly explored heavy themes of power dynamics, exploitation, and abuse in Hollywood, specifically through the long-awaited revelation of Sidney's mother's backstory, Maureen Prescott.
It's revealed Maureen briefly worked as an actress under the stage name Rena Reynolds and was raped at a party held by a powerful movie producer, John Milton. This makes her original trauma the ultimate catalyst for the entire series, spanning decades.
And the connection there is just impossible to ignore, considering that Harvey Weinstein, who later faced numerous sexual misconduct allegations, was an executive producer on the first 3 films.
Right.
These themes of predatory power structures within the industry have taken on a chilling, almost prophetic new relevance.
It connects the narrative to the insidious predatory mechanisms within the industry itself, which resonates so powerfully today, especially within the context of the Hollywood system that created these films. The film essentially suggests that the evil didn't begin with Billy Loomis. It began with the abuse and power dynamics in Hollywood that traumatized Maureen.
It's a remarkable piece of retroactive social commentary.
It really is.
Before we move on, we have to mention one detail of continuity that proved the deep commitment to fan service even back then. the return of Randy Meeks.
Jamie Kennedy's character. His death in Scream 2 drew overwhelmingly negative feedback from the audience. They were not happy.
No, they were not.
So the filmmakers needed to acknowledge that audience connection, so they utilized a creative workaround. Randy appeared via a pre-recorded video message, delivering new rules specifically about how to survive a trilogy.
It was a brilliant device. It honored the character's appeal, allowed him to contribute new meta commentary without having to perform the, unbelievable plot device of him secretly surviving his massive injuries in the second film, which they had actually considered initially.
A much smarter choice.
So after the intended trilogy ended in 2000, the franchise rested for a decade. The first revival came with Scream 4 in 2011, bringing back both Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson for the first time since Scream 2.
And this installment showed the franchise's continued adaptability to contemporary cultural change, pivoting its meta lens again. They absolutely had to update the rules.
For the 2010s.
Scream 4 focused its meta commentary on the state of horror in the early 2010s. The endless cycle of remakes, the pointless sequels, and crucially, the rising tide of social media and online documentation. The returning core trio had to understand the current state of horror films, the new rules to survive.
And the killer's motivation here was truly prophetic, positioning Scream 4 as being remarkably ahead of its time.
Oh, completely. Jill Roberts' motive was driven entirely by raw jealousy over the fame Sidney received as a survivor. She sought to achieve clout and online fame as a pseudo-victim, planning to frame her ex-boyfriend and her accomplice and then just bask in the media spotlight.
This is where Ghostface fully evolves from a personal revenger to a fame seeker.
Exactly. The concept of seeking fame and online notoriety through violence is a grim commentary that has only intensified since 2011. The villain wasn't trying to finish a family feud. They were trying to become a celebrity.
While Scream 4 initially performed modestly, it has since been widely reappraised as a sharp return to form and an improvement over Scream 3. It really cemented the fact that the original trio could still anchor a storyline, and it inadvertently set the entire stage for the modern concept of the legacy sequel.
Even though that term wasn't yet mainstream, it laid all the groundwork.
So the franchise faced the unthinkable after 2011. Following Wes Craven's passing in 2015, and then the subsequent collapse of the Weinstein Company due to sexual misconduct allegations.
The franchise was in complete limbo. The rights eventually landed with Spyglass Media Group in 2019. And the monumental task of reviving a legacy property without its original master fell to a new directorial team.
Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette, the Radio Silence team.
And this required more than just making a movie. It required an act of reverence combined with reinvention. They couldn't simply make Scream 5. They needed a new structural identity.
And they found it in the defining term of the modern revival era, the requel.
Exactly. Scream 2022, the fifth film, but titled without a number, is the perfect example of this. We should probably pause here to define the mechanics of the requel, because it's the structural element that allowed the franchise to continue.
Good idea. A requel is not a reboot, which erases all prior history, nor is it a simple legacy sequel, which only relies on the past.
It's a hybrid. It links spiritually and emotionally to the original film and brings back the legacy survivors, but it establishes an entirely new continuity and a new core cast that can carry the franchise forward.
It uses the history as necessary baggage, but not as the entire story.
Exactly. And this allowed them to introduce the new core cast, Sam, Tara, Mindy, and Chad, while simultaneously bringing back the untouchable legacy survivors.
Yeah.
Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers, and, critically, Dewey Riley.
They leveraged decades of audience loyalty to the core trio to stabilize a brand new narrative.
And the link they established to the original horror wasn't just thematic or psychological, it was literal and genetic.
With the new protagonist, Sam Carpenter, being revealed as the illegitimate daughter of original killer Billy Loomis.
This instantly gave the character an immediate, visceral, and deeply personal internal conflict. The idea that she has the DNA of terror. This conflict manifests in visions where she sees Skeet Ulrich reprising his role as Billy Loomis, essentially whispering dark advice to her.
Which provides a direct, inescapable, and hereditary link to the original terror of 1996. It creates this fascinating nature versus nurture dynamic that is totally unique to the slasher genre.
And the Ghostface motive for this new requel era perfectly updated the meta-commentary for the social media age. It moved past Scream 4's nascent fame-seeking into full-blown toxic fandom.
The sources reveal the killers, Richie Kirsch and Amber Freeman, were revealed to be toxic fans who met on a Stab subreddit, Stab being the film within a film based on Sidney's family's trauma.
So their motivation wasn't revenge for a dead sibling or a broken family. It was pure creative entitlement. Their goal was to become famous by orchestrating a requel that they believed would be a better movie, satisfying their extreme fan community's demands for originality.
This is where it gets really interesting. The directors themselves acknowledged the layers of meta here. They said the script comes from people who loved Scream. So it's fans writing a Scream movie about fans talking about movies.
The franchise had successfully turned its lens on the horror fan community itself, asking what happens when the audience becomes the villain.
But relying on toxic fandom doesn't feel like a cheap shot. It feels like the logical conclusion of that creative psychos theme.
I agree. If movies make psychos more creative, then the age of media saturation and online discourse has made them more entitled and desperate for notoriety. They move from saying movies make psychos more creative to the internet makes psychos more entitled.
That focus on continuity and raising the stakes came at an immense price for the audience, though. Scream 2022 delivered a major necessary shock by killing Dewey Riley.
Stabbed to death when attempting to finish off Ghostface. It was the necessary sacrificial lamb of the requel format.
You had to prove the stakes were real.
Exactly. To prove to the audience that the stakes were genuinely real for the new generation, a legacy character, beloved and seemingly invincible after surviving 4 films, had to fall. It was emotional brutality, but structurally sound. It fulfilled the requel's promise of simultaneous destruction and rebirth.
But even in that tragedy, they balanced the brutality with deep fan service and reverence for the past. The film included extensive Easter eggs, including voiceovers from previous actors like Matthew Lillard, Drew Barrymore, Jamie Kennedy, and Henry Winkler.
In a toast that served as a subtle tribute to Wes Craven.
Right. And critically, for long-term character continuity, the film retroactively confirmed a fan favorite detail.
Kirby Reed.
Kirby Reed, Hayden Panettiere's character from Scream 4, had survived her stabbing. They subtly revealed her status via a screen image in the background of a scene. A small acknowledgement that solidified the franchise's commitment to every thread of its history, even if that history was ambiguous for a decade.
This level of engagement with the entire history set the stage perfectly for Scream 6 in 2023, which took the brave step of moving the entire terror mechanism out of the franchise's traditional setting of Woodsboro for the first time in the main series.
The core 4 survivors, Sam, Tara, Mindy, and Chad, relocated to New York City, demonstrating the franchise's willingness to evolve the setting while keeping the characters grounded in the consequences of their trauma.
Scream 6 also achieved a significant franchise record for character continuity, proving the enduring power of the original cast.
With Courtney Cox returning as Gale Weathers, making her the only actor to appear in 6 consecutive films of a horror franchise.
That is a truly astonishing testament to the longevity and foundational importance of those original 3 characters.
However, Scream 6 did feature a notable structurally complex absence. Neve Campbell. Sidney Prescott did not return due to a pay dispute,
which forced the directors to prove the new generation could carry the weight, accelerating the transfer of the protagonist's mantle from Sidney to Sam.
But the film doubled down on the Ghostface identity, turning the sheer weight of the franchise's history into a physical threat. Digging into the behind-the-scenes reporting, we found that the killers in Scream 6 created a detailed shrine.
A shrine displaying evidence and props from previous massacres. Billy Loomis's knife, masks from 1996 and 2011, etc.
It's brilliant and totally deranged. They turned their murder spree into a full-blown museum exhibit.
And that shrine serves as this chilling visual acknowledgement of the franchise's deep, decades-long continuity. It essentially transforms the history itself into a weaponized artifact, reminds the audience and the characters that every Ghostface attack is connected.
And the new Ghostface motive continued the evolution of the meta-commentary. The killers in the 6 were the family of the previous requel killer, Richie Kirsch.
Detective Wayne Bailey and his children, Ethan and Quinn, seeking revenge on Sam for killing Richie. They literally weaponized an online smear campaign against Sam, furthering the commentary on how toxic online communities can translate into real-world violence and targeted harassment.
The motivation has become layers deep. It's revenge for the requel, fueled by the internet's hatred.
They're seeking justice for the toxic fan who died trying to make his better movie.
And the ending of Scream the 6th paid one final, brilliant homage to the continuity, marrying the old and the new. Kirby Reed, who returned as a fully fledged FBI agent, killed Ethan, one of the Ghostface killers.
By smashing the television set that killed Stu Macher in the original 1996 film over his head.
That is bringing the deep-cut history back to literally crush the present villain.
And that brings us right up to the very recent history and the future. The development of Scream 7 has been turbulent, with the departure of directors and some of the newer stars creating another crisis point for the franchise.
But the announced plan moving forward demonstrates a profound, total reliance on that core, decades-long continuity.
Because the plan is to bring this series full circle. Original creator Kevin Williamson is set to direct, and Neve Campbell is confirmed to return as Sidney Prescott, resolving the absence in Scream 6.
And here is where the commitment to continuity becomes truly complex and highly meta.
The casting choices leverage the multi-generational timeline-spanning continuity by bringing back previously deceased characters. David Arquette is reprising his role as Dewey Riley, who was killed in the fifth film,
alongside Matthew Lillard as Stu Macher and Scott Foley as Roman Bridger.
Given that those three characters are definitively dead-stabbed, electrocuted, and shot, the inclusion of these cast members strongly suggests complex flashback hallucination or highly meta revival elements are integral to the next installment storyline.
They aren't just bringing back Sidney, they are bringing back the memory of the past to haunt the present.
And this highlights the franchise's ultimate strength. The deep character bonds and the meta framework allow it to continuously reinvent how it tells its story, whether through sequels, remakes, or requels, while never letting go of the characters we first met back in Woodsboro in 1996.
The series has proven that its structure is indestructible even if its characters are not.
They successfully managed the ultimate tightrope walk, giving us new blood to carry the story while making us feel that the weight of the past matters in every single frame.
What truly stands out through this entire deep dive is how Scream succeeded by constantly turning its lens on itself and the industry around it.
It created a meta-horror framework that allows it to absorb all the major changes in the industry, from the slasher boom and bust to the age of toxic internet fandom and the requel, and comment on them intelligently.
It is simultaneously a horror story and a cultural critique.
And crucially, it maintains that central thread, the core survival narrative of Sidney, Gale, and Dewey, even in death. Courtney Cox's record appearance streak and Roger L. Jackson's ever-present voice are the anchors that keep the enduring, horrifying identity of Ghostface recognizable.
Even as the motivation shifts from high school revenge to cult-like, fame-obsessed fan entitlement,
the legacy sequels teach us that the ultimate evolution of the franchise's meta-identity is the two killers setting out to create a better movie by becoming the story. The ultimate terror isn't surviving a stab wound, it's surviving media notoriety and the vicious judgment of a fame-obsessed audience.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's go back to that key line from the original film, the dialogue that defined the franchise. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychers more creative, given that the modern requel killers are literally seeking to create a better movie for their toxic fan communities. The ultimate currency is fame, and Ghostface has become the ultimate celebrity. So we leave you with this. If the only way to matter in 2026 is to be a star, how long until the fame-hungry toxic fan becomes the true, enduring monster of every genre?